Yeah, sure, man. But I guess starting out, I think what we usually ask our guests is if you could just tell us a little bit about your past, your history, like what got you into real estate. I feel like that'd be a great starting point for the rest of the group.
I got into real estate for the same reason that probably everybody here is into real estate. They have a W-2 job that they fucking hate. I can swear, right? Nobody cares if I swear. I have a terrible foul mouth.
It's all good, man.
Yeah. So 2010, I was making good money. Got my ass kicked by life a little bit, and then ended up like kind of broke with no money. Figured out I have no real skills. I got out of the army, didn't have any real skills, didn't have any money, didn't know how to make money, didn't know anything about money, just living month to month like so many people. I had a fancy car and nice clothes and no talents. I was in sales, but sales is that's a tough business to really take control. I mean, the best you can do, you can make good money in sales, but it's like always a momentum machine. I'm just not that into it. So I was like, I wanted something that I could slow down this momentum that I was forced to always be chasing the next month. I wanted to slow that down and get some control. And I was going to do that with cash flow. Cash flow was the answer. And so I was like, okay, but I don't have any money. I don't have any skills. I'm lazy, right? I didn't want to start a business. I didn't want to start a brick and mortar. And I didn't want to do something that I was like, hey, maybe this will work. And then in 5 years, I have to like start over. I wanted to do something tried and true. And so I was like, what can you do that's passive, tried and true? You don't need any money and it produces cash, not just like stock market. Like you can go put money in and you get equities. And sure enough, 2014, I was looking around like real estate. You can use debt. I couldn't, it's like it turns out we were in the middle of a foreclosure, boom. It was amazing. So I just learned everything I could. BiggerPockets, learned a tremendous amount. Learned everything I could. I took my time and I did real estate the super low risk, slow and hard way. I saved cash till I had enough to buy a house. It took me like 2.5 years. It actually took me like 5 years. I had to sell a car. I went the super slow way, but I was really afraid of debt at first. And so it wasn't until 2016 or 2014, I moved into a foreclosure. So I did an FHA. Back then in 2014, there were foreclosures on the market that were in good shape. They just had to get rid of them. So we bought a house for 55 grand. I moved in it. I put 3.5 down or something. You really can't do that anymore. I don't think it was 1,800 square foot with a yard. And 18 months later, I painted a couple of rooms and like put some hardwood floors in myself, and it appraised at 115. And I mean, it's not like huge money, but for a guy that was broke for 30 years of his life, and I was like, that was easy. We're going to do that again and again. That was so easy. And so it wasn't until 2016, I bought another one, paid cash, BRRRR on the back end. 2017, I moved to Las Vegas. I bought 3 long distance. 2018, I bought a few long distance. 2019, I bought 1 long distance. And then by then, the problem with BRRRR is that, in my opinion, some people don't do this. Some people get around this. Some people don't think it's that big a deal. But for me, it only really works good when it's Fannie Mae mortgages. So I got to 9 of them plus my primary, and 8 of them plus my primary. And I was like, well, this is done. I got to move on. So in 2019, I started buying multifamily. But that's how I got started.
Cool. Yeah, that's so you said you were afraid of debt at first. What exactly changed for you to feel like you were okay with it? Because that's where I was too, and I'm just curious kind of what your process was. I love the BRRRR strategy. Yeah.
So around this time when I said, hey, I got to figure this out, a part of that was, a lot of it is education. Like a lot of people just don't know. They don't know enough about finance, or they don't know that much about finance. They don't know much about economics. And then real estate math is not difficult at all, but you have to have a good grasp on it to understand how the pieces kind of all work together, the ideas. So part of what I did is I went to school and got a bachelor's in finance. And when you start seeing the stuff on paper and you get used to it, you're like, well, debt is not all created equal. Just like assets are not all created equal. Some of them are good. Some of them aren't that good. Some are better than others. So debt was the same way. It's like, debt's bad. It's like, well, 18% non-secured credit card debt is probably bad. but a 4% fixed rate Fannie Mae mortgage on an asset that has 25% equity and cash flows every month is probably not that bad. That is a tool that you can use pretty heavily in your favor. So some of my changing my debt is a deeper understanding of what debt is and does.
So would you suggest for people looking to get into this strategy to go with a longer term mortgage or a shorter term mortgage? Because I know a lot of people talk about trying to do 15 or 20-year mortgages. It sounds like you're a fan of 30-year. It costs more interest. Why do you explain your thought process there?
I don't see any real advantage I don't see any advantage to taking the 15-year mortgage. Take the 30-year mortgage. The rate, especially right now, the rate percentages are not that different.
Right.
But the dollars per month are different. And so, I mean, look, this is a conversation that a lot of people have, and it's really easy to slip into like, well, what are you really trying to do here? Are you trying to pay off a house, or are you trying to grow a portfolio? Right. And then what's the dollar value of the houses? Like my loans are all $65,000. The 15%, the 15-year rate is going to drop me a quarter of a point. Well, the dollar amount is like nothing. Or excuse me, the interest charge is like nothing, but the dollar amount slows my growth. So, and here's the other thing is like, if you get to 30 years and you want to pay extra, you can pay extra, and you can pay it down in 15 years, and the interest paid will be the same as the 15-year rate.
Yeah.
So you get what's called optionality. I can do a 30-year in 15, but I cannot do a 15 in 30.
Yeah. And so going with that, exactly. I was all about 15 years when I got started, and that's all I had. And I still have some, honestly, just because I've not refinanced them, but that's what I wanted. And then I started learning. And as you learn more, you realize if you do 30-year mortgages and they're fixed and you can cash flow them, you can grow your business much faster. And if you reinvest the difference, what you're saving in your cash flow, reinvest it back into your business, you can grow a lot faster. And so that's kind of been the mindset shift I've had as well. So definitely makes good sense to me.
I think a lot of people, well, I think what I felt is relatable to a lot of people, in that when I started, I was like, dude, I have to get out of this situation because I felt stuck. And so what I really wanted is to get unstuck. And then along the way, which sounds like you had a similar experience, you start to realize that this real estate thing, it's not that hard.
Exactly.
It's not that hard. A lot of idiots doing well in real estate. I'm one of them. You can do well in real estate. Yeah. It's not that hard. And so you're like, ooh, I can make money at this thing. It's pretty reliable. It's actually way low risk compared to a lot of other things. And my desire to get unstuck from the job I started to get unstuck from the job. And then I was like, hang on a second. I feel ambitious in real estate. So now I don't want to just pay 3 houses off and be done. I want to build a portfolio because this thing works. And if you do it, at least the way I did it, I don't spend any time on it. I spend 0 hours a week on my rental portfolio. I haven't even seen about 40% of my rentals. Never. And they're actually, some of them are in town. I've never even driven by them.
Well, I'm jealous there because I can't say that. That sounds awesome though.
I did that from the start because I knew better. I was like, I see a lot of people in real estate. What they do is they buy real estate because they want to quit a job they hate, and then real estate becomes the next job they hate.
Right.
Which, that's a mistake that people should. I would advise people to think about that very, very diligently before they start. If you build this thing without property management or the possibility to do property management, you are building yourself a job you cannot quit.
And I made that exact same mistake. What it started to do to me was it made me not want to buy any more houses. So rather than wanting to go and look for deals, I was like, no, I don't want to do that because I know it's going to be so much work and I just don't want to do it. And then you get to the point where you're like, oh, well, I need to hire people to do this stuff for me. And that way I don't have to do it myself. And then all of a sudden you want to go buy houses again. So that's definitely a huge mindset shift. I think each person comes to it at a different time, but very important.
Yeah. There's definitely a thing where people don't want to, they just kind of they have this tendency to want to do it all themselves. I get it. You bring in somebody else, you're bringing in their risk, right? You're bringing in their problems, their drama, their personalities, all sorts of stuff. They might be terrible. They might be worse than you at it. So like you have a process of going through, I've been through 3-4 property managers before I found one. Now my property manager, he manages 84 doors for me. I don't do anything, right? I'm going to go buy more, and I'm not, so, but I have that built in now. And it's a process. It's not like a super easy. I got lucky. I only had to go through 3 property managers. Some people go through a lot more than that. Some people go through less, but it's definitely one of those things where it's either like figure out how to hire somebody or figure out how to do it forever. But those are your only 2 choices. Somebody's going to do the damn work. Somebody's going to manage that property. And so the skill of learning how to hire somebody, the soft skill of managing people, in my opinion, everybody's skill sets are different. That was a far superior skill set to learn because that scales in other ways too. If you can manage your property, it's like, bro, you can only manage so many properties. That skill set only goes so far. It can only save you so much. But if you can manage another human capital to do what you need to do, for mutual benefit, it's like that scales infinitely. You could get people to do all sorts of stuff with you.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting topic in the sense that, building that team. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit on that? I know, and there's different components to the team, right? You need the financing, right? And then you also need the property manager, and there may be other components as that as well. Could you elaborate a little bit on how you were able to do that as you scaled?
Yeah, so this is a little weird. It's a little unfair to talk about because everybody has unfair advantages and disadvantages. Everybody's got a different personality. Introverts, extroverts. Some people communicate better than others. Some people are likable and some people are obnoxious. All sorts of stuff. People happen to be my strong suit. So I don't necessarily have good advice on how to find individuals, but I can talk extensively about how to make sure that you're always getting in front of people, and always telling people what you do. And then you will naturally attract the like-minded people over a long period of time. And that's the really important part, is over the long period of time. Because what people want to do is they want to go out and they want to find the team and then find the property. And they're like, how do you find the perfect team? And I'm like, bro, your first deal, you are awful. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to go slow. You're timid. You're not going to want to pull the trigger quickly. And you're going to take up a lot of people's time and you're going to annoy them. You're just going to be so annoying. And you know who's not going to deal with that? A really well-experienced investor, property manager, or vendor, right? They're like, oh, this newbie, come see me on that third deal when you know what you're actually doing a little bit, right? And so part of the process, like, you know who new investors get for contractors? They get new contractors. Because the contractor that's new is like, I need every job, and I don't really know what I'm doing yet, so I'll take anybody. And so these 2 people get paired up. Now, the key is to get to the next deal so you get the next level up property manager and contractor. And so I say all that to say, I'm not trying to ramble. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, always be networking with vendors, because as you get better, you'll get access to better people. When you're new, you can get lucky. You'll get probably a good lender or a good property manager or a good contractor. You'll get 1 and 2 bad ones, something like that, whatever the case is, statistically, right? And then as you get better, you'll get better ones. And then if you do really well at this, which anybody can, if you do really well at it, you're going to outgrow all of these people, right? So then you have to go be always on. That's always a grind. So what I tell people is, you have to network. Everybody who's here, the 20 of us or whatever here, like, you're doing the right thing just by coming here and saying, look, my name's Alex. I do single family, multifamily investing in North Carolina. I'm always in need of deals. These are what my deals look like. I need multifamily deals. This is what I'm trying to buy. Just spew it into the world and tell people, like, this is what I do. And then, on top of that, produce content, be a reasonably, charming person to be around, provide value. I'm value first on everything. I don't ask people for anything. I'm always just give. And then people be like, Alex, how can I help you? I'll find you a deal. I'll give you the freaking money to pay for it. I'll rehab it. I'll give you a loan, yada, yada, yada. So it's a constant process. You don't need the perfect team. You need a team, and you need to learn lessons while you're dealing with that team, and you need to prep for the people that are going to come next.
It's great advice. No, really. Luke, did you have anything you wanted to elaborate on?
Well, so, I always compare this to kind of where I am with what I'm doing. And I've been in the position where hired the general contractors, and then it's like you get the people that maybe weren't the best pair and, all that stuff. And I guess kind of where I am with it is similar, as far as you kind of got to hire people and work with people and then figure out, okay, this is not maybe the best one, and then move to somebody else. And I think the biggest thing is being okay with taking a direction, making a decision, and then making a mistake and fixing it and continuing to grow your network so that you can make better choices for yourself in the future and business.
Yeah. So yeah, 100%. Like you got to get in there, making mistakes. I mean, I love making mistakes. I hate to say it like that. People think I'm crazy. I love making mistakes because like I only ever make them once.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, get all these out of the way, knock this out. So part of what you do, here's what happens. Everybody who's dealt with a contractor probably can relate to this. The first contractor you hire, like you ever get that stomach feeling? You're like, this guy sucks.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know anybody else. So I have to take him. Anybody ever done that? And then it goes badly and you're like, I knew all along. That right there is the rookie mistake. It's the one that everybody makes. And then the next time you're like, no, I'll just be patient and wait for the guy who I think can do it. Right? I've done it with tenants. The first time you get a tenant, you're like, I'll just get anybody in there. They tear the place up, right? You knew before they even moved in, they were going to be bad. And you said yes because you were desperate. That is the lesson that you have to go through when you first start. You're like, how do you build a team? I'm like, dude, make that mistake. Then you'll be okay. So you have to go there, get the contractor that sucks and you deserve him because you said yes. Because you said yes, of course you deserve him. And then the next time you're like, okay, the guy who shows up and I had a guy who's like does concrete, and then I posted on Facebook about like I need somebody that does foundation work. And he's like, oh, I can do it. And I'm like, why? How come? And then so he ended up doing that job, and he did a pretty good job. And then I said something about I need brickwork, and he's like, I can do that. And I'm like, I think you're just saying yes to everything. But I needed somebody, and I just made this mistake. So for those people who are thinking they're new, like, oh, I just got to get through these things when you're new, you still make mistakes. So I needed a brick guy, couldn't find anybody. So I hired this ding dong. I've known him for 6 years. I've done $25,000, $30,000 worth of work with him. And he ripped me off for $1,200. And I had just paid him $7,000 freaking 3 weeks ago. And I knew when I gave him the $1,200, I was like, this is a mistake. I know this is a mistake. So I hope that makes people feel at ease. Like when you go, be a little cautious. Don't go give somebody 30, 40 grand right out of the gate that you don't know, parcel them out money that you can't afford to. You have to be able to afford to lose a little bit of money on a deal. If you can't afford to lose anything, your deal's too tight. You have to have room to make some mistakes. And so you make $1,200 mistake, $2,000, $5,000 mistake. It's not fun, but that's okay. You make the mistake, you move on, you find somebody better. You probably won't make the painful mistakes stick with people. You learn them.
So that actually brings us to our next question, actually, which is related to investment criteria. So you said having a little bit of wiggle room in there. What exactly do you mean by that? And in your case, do you tend to focus on certain areas? You talked about you investing outside of your current location. Can you kind of give us an idea of what your, I guess, investment criteria are? And then number two is maybe why do you invest outside of where you're currently located?
Well, okay. In 2017, when I did that, in 18, when I did that podcast, I was out of my market. I have since moved here.
Oh, you moved to it. Okay, perfect.
Yes. And I had been here before, so it wasn't like, it was a market I knew. I did the bulk of my investing out of state, but I built the business and the systems out of state. But like, I'm trying to think how I can explain this. Your buying criteria comes from two things. I'm spitballing here, but the buying criteria is going to come from two things. One, you need to know the sweet spot of your market based on what you do. Like the BRRRR is going to have a range that it kind of works really good in Kentucky. And then, my guess is $250,000 houses don't work great to BRRRR in Kentucky, and $30,000 houses probably don't work that great. If your market's anything like mine, that $100,000 to $180,000, $100,000 to $150,000 range is probably, or in my market, it's about $80,000 to $120,000. That's where BRRRR works great. And so you have to be looking at deals all the time, every day, so that you know what a good one looks like. And then when the deal comes across your desk, you can pull the trigger. If you go, I got a buddy the other day, he wants to buy a multifamily. I just closed a few, and he's like, I want to do what you do. How do I do it? And I'm like, what's your buying criteria? He goes, well, I want to buy between 10 and 100 units. And I'm like, dude, you're going to be looking at every freaking deal for the whole state. You're going to be looking at too many deals, and you're not going to know why this deal or that deal is right or wrong for you. So when I was buying BRRRR, right, my criteria was I want to own it at 75% of ARV when I'm all done. I want to own it for 75% of what it's going to be worth. That's most important, right? The second is, it's got a freaking cash flow. I didn't have a cash flow minimum, but it had to cash flow. So I knew, for really easy, simple examples, I knew that if I owned a house that was worth $100,000 and I could be all in it for 75 grand and it rented for $900, I knew that that was a deal. It only cash flows $150 or $200 a month, but that's like, the people, let me tell you straight up, the people that are telling you they're getting $400 a month on a BRRRR deal are lying to you, right? Or they don't know how taxes work. Right? They don't know how Schedule E works. Like, give it a 10-year rip and then let me see that $400 a month, right? Let me after CapEx and vacancy and turnover. So a BRRRR is going to make you $150 or $200 a month. If you own it for 70, it rents for 900, or excuse me, I own it for 75. It rents for 900. I'm going to cash flow $200 a month, and I'm going to have 25% equity, and the loan's going to be 75%. So I have nothing in it. That's a perfect deal for me. I don't need anything more than that. That's a perfect deal for me. So I go to the market and I say, I need a house that I can buy all in for 75, whether that means buy it for 25 and put 50 into it, or buy it for 50 and put 25 into it, or anywhere in between. I didn't care. Right. Because I wasn't afraid of the rehab. Now, again, that's because my contractor at the time, I had a sick contractor. That was my strength. So, deal flow has always been my weakest point. So you're going to find out some people might have a ton of deals, terrible contractor flow, ton of deals, can't get them paid for. So those are the three things. I'm kind of going off on a tangent now. I apologize for rambling. Deal flow, money flow, contractor flow. Those are the three things you need to, if you can get those three things, you can run you can run real estate for days.
So money flow, you said earlier that when you're buying the BRRRR deals, you were paying cash for them. Is that how you've always done it? Or have you ever raised, I know your bigger deals now you're having to raise some capital for, right? What types of strategies do you use to try to raise capital, and how do you structure the deal when you do it?
I just did this with somebody yesterday. So first I want to express, I don't hear this said enough. And to me, it's like a really big deal, especially on BRRRR. The goal, it's not always possible because not everybody has $100,000 sitting around. Trust me, I get it. So, but the goal, the goal should be to separate the purchase and the lending transactions. The problem when you're doing BRRRR or when you're buying anything right now, especially in this market when it's up, it's like you are competing against cash buyers and they will win even if they pay less, because doing a loan at the time of closing is like 2 complicated transactions that take 8 people each, and they all have to work together, and you got 30 days to do it. Somebody else is going to be like, I'll write you a check. See you in 3 days, right? So if you can separate the buying transaction from get the property, get it fixed up, get a tenant in there, and then you go get a loan, bro, life gets easy. Life gets super easy. So I recommend trying to separate those 2 transactions when possible. As for raising money, I can go, I don't really want to take everybody's time. So I can go over this extensively later if anybody wants, but there's an extremely high value in being able to write out your ideas as a business plan. Maybe not a formal one, but just write your ideas out, like what you're trying to accomplish, how you're going to do it, what are the risks, what are the financials, and being able to take that idea on paper and give it to somebody and say, hey, I need partners for this. Do you want to give me some money? Do you want to make money with me? And that, and everyone's gonna say no, because you're bad at it, right? But by the 3rd or 4th time, right? I asked the guy for 30 grand like 4 years ago, and I was like, dude, I don't care about the 30 grand. In fact, I don't even need it. It's going to help me out, but I don't really need it. But in 4 years, I'm going to ask you for 200 grand, something like that. So the goal is you do these business models. I do them all the time, business reports, and I can give you samples if you'd like. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but I write what my ideas out and I give it to somebody so that they can look at it and they can understand what I'm trying to do on their time, not me just trying to hawk somebody for 30 grand while they're in front of me. That's basically, I mean, you can con people out of money, but what a guy or a gal is going to do is they're going to go home and they're going to show their husband or wife, and they're going to be like, I'm going to give Alex 50 grand. And she's going to be like, why? And he's going to be like, well, I mean, he explains it well. You have to talk to him. It's like, this is a terrible way to sell. This is a terrible sales pitch. So if you can write it on paper and you be like, look, here it is, lady, here it is. Look, we're going to make this. We're going to make this. We're going to get the money back here. Here's what happens if he doesn't pay. Here's where our risk is. We're on the deed of trust. And you list out all these things. Like, that makes you look, A, professional. 2, it gets you a much better position to sell people on their terms rather than only when you're in front of them. So you don't have to ask for them for their time. It also, it helps you really flesh out your ideas, because your ideas all sound good to you in your head, but they don't sound as good to other people when you say them, especially on the spot. So writing things out helps you really thoroughly flesh out ideas. I have ideas. I write all the time. I have ideas that I think are good, and I get my paper and I'm like, this is never going to see the light of day. This has got to go away. So raising money, write your idea on proposal so people know what you're trying to do, have it very thorough, have the ask, have the exit strategy. And then again, like the networking, it's like, ask somebody for money. They're going to say no. Next time you have a deal, ask them again. They'll say no. Then when you make money without them, make sure you shove it in their face. And I'm serious, because you do that enough times, they're like, this Alex guy's a good bet. And I've been passing on him and everybody else is making money. And he keeps telling me about it. Now I don't want to miss the next one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I've heard before too, another thing you can do, I've heard before, you have to have your plan on paper so people can look at it, or some type of, plan in place. And even too, you can ask them if they know anybody, like you said, talking to a lot of people, asking if they know anybody, but the direct ask, I think, is going to get you pretty far. I just started raising money myself, and I've only done with 2 different lenders, but it's awesome when you can make it happen. It's really cool. So
I raised $280,000 for the 24 unit last year, and that was difficult. Very, very, very difficult for me. Very ugly difficult. We had to borrow money from somebody else last minute to spot one of the investors because he didn't have the money in time, and then we had to pay. It was a bridge loan for an equity partner. It was ugly for a small deal, $280,000.
You got it done though. That's what's important, right?
So in December, I raised 1.4 million myself. And it was easier. And one of the things that I had done differently, well, one, you have a track record, bro. As the more you have a track record, the easier it gets. Really, that is it. So like, that's why content is so important. Like, you need to have a website. You need to tell people what you're doing. You need to be on social media. You have to. If you want to know what I'm doing, go to brokersofchoice.com. You can see all my deals, very, very thorough, and you'll know that I'm not screwing around. So, but one of the things that I made the mistake of was I should have asked, and from now on, every time I need money, I will ask people often, early. And the real key here is ask every warm body you have ever met. I asked the guy like 2 weeks before I closed. I'm like, hey man, I need like 100. You want to give me like 100 grand? And he's like, I absolutely would have given you 100 grand. I have like something like $600,000 or $700,000 in an account that I use for my friends who do LPs. I give them money all the time, but your timing is wrong. And I didn't ask him months earlier that I could have, because I assumed he wouldn't be interested. So if you have an idea that you're going to need money for, I suggest you write that thing on paper thoroughly, right? My CAMs, when I did underwriting for small business loans, our credit application memos were like 40 pages, right? Your flip deal or your BRRRR deal, that's 3, 4, 5 pages. I mean, it should be thorough. And I can, again, if you reach out to me, I can help give you some ideas of what to put together. But you should write that thing immediately, and you should start sending it to people, even just to judge. Like, hey, send it to Alex, send it to Luke, send it to Raphael. Be like, what do you think about this? And you're like, this is a terrible idea. Nobody's going to do this. And so you can tighten it up. Or, hey, that's good. But you get it in front of people. Even if you get in front of people that say no, they might say yes for the next one. You invest little seeds in people's cerebellum. And
then they might even think about it.
Yeah, so I know someone who does that as a strategy, where they write out a proposal or something like that, and then they send it out to people and they say, hey, can you give me some feedback on it? And then they read it and they interpret it, and they're like, oh, this actually seems like a pretty good deal, a pretty good opportunity. And they start asking them questions. That's how they open up the conversation. So it's a pretty interesting strategy.
That's a good soft sell. Like, oh, this is for somebody else. You can't have it, but wouldn't this be nice? Wouldn't this be a good investment for them? And but what about me?
Yeah, no, well, you just ask for their feedback, and then they read it. They're like, oh, wow, this is like pretty awesome, and it just kind of opens the door. And again, that was something that I read about. And yeah, it seems like a pretty solid idea to incorporate into your.
Yeah, you don't have to hard sell people when you're telling them, like, I never think, I don't, so I'm not a broker. I don't sell courses, coaching, none of that. I don't sell anything. I never make money from people. I only make money with people. And so if you go to somebody and you're like, look, this is not me borrowing money from you. This is us doing a deal together. We're going to make money together. In fact, the first of many. So if you come in with that attitude and you're confident about what you're doing and you have it on paper, the more you screw around with this, the more you invest in the idea, the more confident that you are that this will work, the more that will ooze onto other people, and they'll be like, yeah, of course, I'd be crazy not to. So I love that idea. Like, just like, hey, this is how does this look? Does this look good? Do you think somebody would do this? Whatever it takes to get in front of somebody's face, and just plant that connection between, you know, if anybody asks me about my Facebook is a loony bin, right? I'm just so abrasive all the time. But the point is, I'm always Alex real estate, Alex real estate, Alex real estate, Alex real estate. And then people I don't even freaking talk to for years, I'd find out later, I'm like, they've been stalking my Facebook and they're like, hey, I saw you doing that real estate deal. I'd love to participate. Yes.
And that's
yes,
the power of branding. And you've done a really good job of it. And I've checked out your social media accounts and what you produce. And I mean, branding is so huge. And that's why it's so awesome. And you keep producing awesome content. Could you talk a little bit about that and how you kind of incorporated your content strategy into your business and how that's enabled you to kind of scale as much as you have?
Yeah. It's kind of, I've been thinking about this for a few years now. Intellectual property, your person as a brand on the internet is going to be worth more in the future than any real estate you'll ever do by a long shot, if you do it right. So I don't know if you noticed, but this internet fad is not going to go away anytime soon. Social media is not going away. Get in your face on the internet. If I know there's people here who don't do it and they're like, well, you know, and it's not comfortable for me either. I hate it, in fact. But you know, you get used to it. It's like it feels so sleazy. You're like, yeah, you get used to that. You know, the old saying, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. Like real estate's not that complicated. You don't need a ton of brain power to do it. You don't need a bunch of credentials to do it. You just need other people to know you are doing it. And then they will be like, oh, well, and especially if you add value, like my content, again, I don't sell anything. All I do is I come to events like this, or I host meetups, or I produce content. It's like, look, I did this. It changed my life. I haven't had a job in over a year. I traveled to Mexico twice last year. I just got back from Las Vegas. I go all over the country all the time. I do whatever I feel like. And real estate has afforded me almost all of that freedom. And I tell people, I'm like, dude, I did that for me. I don't need to charge anything. I just want to give. I want the freedom for other people. And so if you produce content that's valuable, authentic, right? I don't do any email marketing. I'm terrible at marketing. I'm good at being me and loud, but I don't do any marketing. I have no strategy. I don't do email campaigns. I don't check my Google tracking for my website. I have no idea if I'm getting bigger or smaller or any of this stuff. I don't care. If you put out original content, they asked me to be on the BP podcast because my name just kept popping up because I post on BP a lot, not because, you know, they had Grant Cardone on there. They didn't need me. Right? Like they didn't need me. Point is, if you tell people what you're doing and you do it with the biggest megaphone that's ever existed, social media, your people will come to you. As I said from the very start, like I'm a polarizing guy for some people, for a lot of people. And so the people that don't like me, I don't want them anyway. I don't care. Right. And then the people who do like me, it's like, we can do a lot of business together because you get my vibe. So social media lets you find your people. It lets you add value, and it's only going to grow. Like we're just getting started in social media.
Definitely. No, of course. So I guess, Luke, do you think that you want to think we can open up to questions? I know we have a ton of other, we have like a ton of other questions we could ask you, but I thought, I mean, given the fact we do have quite a bit of showing here, we thought we'd kind of open up to everyone in the audience. I'll be checking Facebook as well. So if you guys that are watching on Facebook have any questions in particular, feel free to chime away in the comments and we'll ask away. So.
Hey, Alex, this is Jake. You mentioned you maxed out you stopped doing BRRRR when you got up to maxing out your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mae. Do you still do BRRRR? If not, what drew you to multifamily? Why are you still putting all your energy there? Do you come back and sell off BRRRRs and still take advantage of that? What's your portfolio look like now? Where you spend your energy, and why'd you get away from BRRRR?
So, okay, 2019, I bought my last BRRRR, my 8th. So I own 8 still. And I have zero, call it effectively zero invested in the entire portfolio. So it's free cash flow. And they all have 25% or greater equity, probably closer. I think it probably averaged 35% across the board. So like there's zero benefit in me selling it. And this is important because you're like, well, you could take that cash out. It's like, right, I can take the cash, but I cannot replace it with a similar asset because asset prices have raised. So in 2019, asset prices were going up. Everybody who's trying to do BRRRR now, oh, did you guys lose my video?
Yeah, just slow down, but we can still hear you though.
Okay. I wonder if my battery died. In 2019, asset prices rise. So like you can't do it as easy as you could before, but you can still do it. It shouldn't be a deterrent. It's just, it takes, a little bit harder. And so I had 8 of these things, right? And I'm like, well, you can only get 10. And I had a primary residence. So really I could only get 1 more. And so how much time, the time to start pivoting was now. Does that make sense? Because it's like, I can get 1 more and then I have to pivot. And so I'm kind of at this point where the prices are rising and I should pivot before I need to. I don't want to wait till I have to pivot. I want to pivot on my terms. And so 2019, I started thinking about it. I started posting on Facebook. I started telling people through my website, yada, yada, yada. And on Wednesday nights for 3 years, I did free one-on-one video chatting with strangers for no reason other than I just like talking to people. And so on Thursday nights, 2 strangers would come on at 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. and just be like, hey, I got a question. How can I help you? How can you help me with this? Da, da, da. And so this guy comes on there. I helped him buy a few houses. We became friends. And in 2019, March, he shows up and he's like, I know you want to buy multifamily. I found this 24 unit in Fayetteville. We should try to buy it. And then we did. I overpaid for that property a little bit. But the reason I initially got attracted to single families was the cash flow. And my first goal was 10 properties in 10 years. I got 8 properties in only 3 years. And so what hit me like a ton of bricks was I have underestimated my own ambition. That's a good problem to have, but it is one to recognize, right? So another thing. So, okay, it started that I couldn't get any more multifamily I couldn't get any more single family mortgages. I knew that I was undercutting my talents because I had gone so much faster than I had anticipated. And then lastly, and this is important, multifamily is a better, more efficient use of money. It's more efficient at scale to lend. It's more efficient at scale for property management. It's more efficient at scale for geography. And it's more efficient in risk because a 100-unit property that's full is likely going to continue to stay full. If you have 100 properties scattered all over the area, one of those areas might decline in value, and now you have a subset of your portfolio that is higher risk than you intended. Does that make sense? Like you don't have control over that place. It's like neighbors moved in next door and now nobody will move in. Like shitty neighbors moved in. Now I can't rent the place out. With an apartment building, it's like, dude, if it's been rented day in and day out for 10 years, the likelihood that it's going to be 50% occupied or 50% vacant within the next 5 years is zilch, damn near zilch. So with a bigger property, you have all these reductions in risk and all these increases in efficiency of scale. And so for me, it was like, look, all those 3 things combined. And the 4th one, I'll tell you the 4th one next. It was more efficient in scale. It was, I could only get 1 more mortgage. And it was becoming very difficult to find multifamily properties because the prices were coming up. And then lastly, I was getting bored of it, to be honest. And that sounds so cocky, but I was like, dude, you buy one, you rehab it, you refinance it, you repeat it. And I wasn't even there. So I didn't even see it. It was totally unexhilarating, right? It's just like, I got a bunch of pictures from my contractor and then I got a paycheck. I mean, it was nice, but it wasn't fun. I was bored. So part of it was to increase my own ability to challenge myself by doing something harder.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think the efficiency piece is a big one, but yeah, I think a lot of us that are interested in BRRRR, I know that you get to that point where it's like, hey, do I take the commercial route? Do I go find new ways to still do the BRRRR strategy? And like you mentioned earlier, cash flow gets harder at that point. Or do I put that energy, because a deal is a deal, and if it's a big deal or a small deal, the amount of energy there is probably pretty similar, but I'm not there yet, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah, I will say I wouldn't have been able to do my 24 unit had I only done 1 or 2 BRRRRs. No way. So part of it was credibility. People knew me because I had, I started my website in 2006, late 2017. So I had that thing for like 2 years. My deals were on there. It was cranking along. People came along and saw me and kind of knew that they knew at least what I told them I knew. Like they knew what I was doing. And that helped me with the lending too, right? I was in lending. So going through those smaller deals, really, it helped me. Some people say, don't screw around with the small deals. If you want to do multifamily, just jump in. And I understand that argument. But for me, as a guy who, when I was terrified to buy my first deal, I thought it changed my life, right? It was a big, big, big deal for me. And then to go off and, to think that I could just go off and buy 300 units out of the gate was asinine. So 24 was too small of a property for me and I overpaid for it and it was not that nice. But I couldn't have done the 52 without it. So I went on my own little path. I don't know what the exact right path is for you, but I will say there is a point where you have to stop looking at multifamily singles. If you want to do multifamily, there is a point where you have to kind of stop with the singles and start looking at the multifamily.
That was gonna be my next question. Can you do both? Can you put bandwidth to both?
I'm currently flipping. I flipped 2 houses last year and I bought a 52 unit. When I was doing the flips, that's kind of all I could focus on. And again, your resources matter. If you got 600 grand in the bank and you got money to throw at this, it's not that big a deal. If you have good deal flow, maybe not that big a deal. But I was like hunting for deals and trying to get it paid for. So 2 things that those took up more time than it made for some other people. So I didn't have time to go off and do something else. When I found the 52 unit, I turned the flips off. So for me, again, as a stupid slacker, it was difficult to do both. Right now, I'm going to go find a flip. I should close on it on Monday. Once that's closed, I'll set that on autopilot. I'll start looking for another multifamily. So I think I'll do both today, but I'm a little bit better at it now too.
That's helpful. Thanks.
Let's see, I'll check the chat if you guys want to kind of chime in with your questions.
I'll throw another one out there, Alex. When you were making that switch from BRRRR, so you're getting up into 8, you're realizing you got to pivot soon, you got drawn to multifamily, maybe it fell in your lap, maybe it didn't. What processes did you immediately realize you were going to have to change from BRRRR to now multifamily? What's different between the asset classes as far as what you do to work on your business as opposed to working in it?
I don't ever work in the business ever. I don't like it, and so I'm just not going to do it. Somebody else is going to have to do that. That's just that's just my personality. Blessing and a curse. I'm not trying to pitch my website because I don't make any money on my website, but just so you know, I write very thoroughly about my ideas on these things. On my first multifamily, between the question you just asked, like what I had to do differently and the mistakes I made, I think I have about 7,500 words blog on the first multifamily. So if anyone wants to read it, there's a lot in there. The process transaction is actually quite different. Lending is different. Raising money was different. The underwriting was much more thorough. You said something earlier that a lot of people say, and I get it, but I actually disagree with it more now that I've done both. People say, well, doing a transaction is the same, whether it's 1 unit or 100 units, it's one transaction. Yeah. But the single family transactions are kind of easy. The 52 unit transaction, that took me 6 months and 40 people. A BRRRR deal takes you 7 people: contractor, vendor, insurance, title, lend, all like whatever, 7 people, 8 people. The multifamily transaction took a lot more people and different balance sheets and it was quite a bit more complicated. When you bought your first when I bought my first single family home, I bought a terrible deal because I didn't know any better. And I stumbled through it. So not only was I bad at the transaction, I bought a lousy deal. I think that's a rite of passage. People think, I don't want to get my first deal. I'm scared because I'm going to get a bad deal. And I'm sitting here now in retrospect, I'm like, dude, your first deal is always going to be your bad deal because you're bad at it. Your first deal should be your worst deal. Hopefully, right? You should get better. So my 24 unit, again, it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of butchered it in many ways. I did some things right, but I made a lot of mistakes. And it's like, yeah, it makes money though. And because real estate is very forgiving, thankfully. And we did our underwriting well. It makes enough money. So now I can do the next one better. So it's a balance, bro. It's a balance. Like you're going to go into this and you're going to mess it up. the key is to like, still make a little bit of money. You don't want to mess it up too bad.
Definitely. We actually had a question in the chat box from Ricardo. Hey, Ricardo, when did you feel comfortable to leave your job, or did you just go all in your BRRRRs?
So, well, it's a little bit of an interesting story. So I am a rebel for life. After I got out of the Army, I quit jobs every 2-3 years because I just can't with people. I just can't. I'm getting sick of this. Goodbye. And usually with nothing in nothing lined up. And so the idea has always been like, well, I'm going to take 3 months worth off of work and see if I can make it on my own. And if I have to go back to work, I will not let my ego get in my way, and I will go back to work. And so I've done that, I think, 4 times. And it's not a good career move, but I didn't care about a career. I cared about, finding my own path in life. So what I'll say is, if you're worried about quitting your job, you should probably quit, right? You should probably just quit. Give yourself 5 months. And you might find out that you're not as good as you thought, and you're a slacker like me, and you're not able to do it yet. And so you go back to work, and that's okay. That's okay in my opinion. I hope I give this advice all the time. I hope I'm not ruining anybody's life, but but some people are too scared to ever quit. And that's worse in my opinion, right? They have enough and they still can't quit. So lighten your debt, your overhead, live dirt cheap, right? Live super broke by choice. Broke is a choice. Live broke by choice. Then, I had 8 rentals. They were cash flowing. I mean, on taxes, it's about $200 a month. On most months, I make more than that. But to be fair, I have a VA disability. So that's an extra $1,300 a month. It's tax-free. It's not luxurious living, but I live cheap, super cheap. And so both of those things have happened. So I've done that a few times. Well, in 2019, late, I moved from Las Vegas to North Carolina, and I didn't have a job, and we were going to move to another city where they had Charlotte, where there's a banking capital, because I work in banking. So I was going to go there. And I said, let me do the thing I always do. Let me give myself 6 months to try to, I'll flip a house. I've never flipped a house, but if you can make I was only making 50 grand a year at the bank. So if you can flip 2 houses and make a good profit, maybe you don't have to go get a job. Maybe you can do this. And I ended up making quite a bit more than that, thankfully. And then I bought the multifamily, and then I did a video series for BiggerPockets, which it doesn't pay well, but it's got potential. And so I don't think I'm ever going back to work now, but I did not intend that. The whole deal was, I'm going to quit in 6 months. I'll go back to work, and I'll eat the ego if I have to. And I think that's a very healthy way to do it. People have this thing like, are you going to quit forever? It's like, dude, just quit for 6 months. Try it out.
Awesome. So yeah, that's a great response, really. And actually, Johnson, hey Johnson, he has a question. He said, "Hey Alex, thanks for the great insight. I was just wondering, what kind of neighborhoods do you buy in, given that you said that the price range you BRRRR is around $80,000 to $100,000? Could you share some insights in how to pick the neighborhoods if you are out of state investor?"
Is he saying Kentucky is nice and my $80,000 houses are in the dumps? Is that what he's asking? He's like, what kind of place you getting for 80 grand?
I mean, Johnson, and he may be tuning in from, I don't know exactly where he's tuning in from. So again, maybe in his markets, 80 to 100 is just not even close. And I've noticed that in like the West Coast, for example, or even in the East Coast, some places. So,
yeah. So everybody has to, everybody lives somewhere. Everybody lives in an independent market, so they're not all the same. For me, the average home price in Fayetteville retail is 150 grand. So $100,000 house is kind of like, well, this is $100,000 house. It's like not that nice, but I live here. Can't be that bad. It rarely gets broken into, right? It has not gotten broken into. But there are places in town that I can't buy, right? There's places. This is the hardest part about out-of-state investing. This is the hardest thing, and people happen to me all the time. They email me and they're like, "I found this deal. Look, the numbers are sick." And the internet gives people this really uncomfortable or really inefficient. The internet has taught people the wrong first rule of real estate. They're like, just make sure the numbers work. That's not the first rule of real estate. Everybody seems to have forgotten the first rule of real estate, which is location, location, location. So if you don't know the neighborhoods that you're buying out of state, if you don't know the market, that's your first job, is to go learn the areas. Talk to people who are local who will give you help. A lot of them will. Ask them to send you, ask them for maps. Like, can you send me a map, read out the areas that I just absolutely should not buy? Spend some time learning the market. Go there and go to a RIA and shake hands with people that you're going to be doing business with, and you're going to be investing in their market. These are all really important things to do that I highly recommend. Otherwise, you do what people send me deals like, I bought this house for 30 grand and it rents for, 600, 2% rule. And I'm like, and then they call me like, but I can't get a property manager to go to it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't blame them. I would not go there either. Like, the numbers can be whatever the numbers are, but if nobody will go there, and I have horror stories like that for days. So, talk to you, like, even though you're out of state, you need to make your social circle needs to be locals, at least in part. And it also makes the locals happy. Like, there's nothing I don't like more than being around here and doing deals and finding some out of state investor came along and is making money, doesn't care about any of the relationships here in town. And then every once in a while I'll get an email like, hey, can you help me out with this? It's like, no, go fuck yourself. Like, it's a relationship business, right? You're out of town. Make these people, like, you're going to switch contractors. You're going to switch property managers. People are going to show up and like, you're going to own this property for 30 years. You need to make an investment into that culture, into that community. You need to make an investment into the people of that community, in my opinion. That's how I do it. So it's not just about neighborhoods. It's about when something goes wrong, you have a guy in the ground. You're like, hey, Alex, I invest in Fayetteville. My contractor went ghost. Can you hook me up? Yes, I got you. Why? Because we shook hands once at a RIA because you flew in because you took this deadly seriously. So that's it. Handshake goes a long way. Email, yeah. You're just so-and-so at Gmail.
100% agree. And that's awesome what you just shared. Again, we've had people come in from other parts of the country to our meetups, for example. And I'm sure that's happened in your case over in where you're located at as well. But like, if you're interested in investing in an area, attending a CREA or a RIA or, local meetups that are run by people, I think that's a great way to just get your boots on the ground and meet people. And again, real estate is a relationship business. So
yeah, people want to send emails from California and be like, hey, Fayetteville, you go and a realtor is going to find me a property and a contractor is going to do all the work and a property manager is going to do this, and they better do it all good and send me my check. And also, I'm never going to talk to you on the phone. Just email me. Don't bother me too much. It's like, how about I just steal your house? Just how about I just stop calling you?
Well, scams happen too.
And then you have to do it. I'm sorry. And then you have to, and then they want everybody who I know in person is going to get priority over you if I've never even met you. Now that's just human nature. Mm-hmm. So highly recommend going. If you can line up something where you're like, hey, I'm going to Fayetteville on a weekend, email 50 people in town and be like, you want to get beer? You want to get a beer? You want to get a coffee? You want to get dinner? You want to get lunch? Can we meet at a property? Can you got a walk through? You're going to do like email all these people and try to shake as many hands as you can in one weekend. Go to a RIA, like be super efficient about it. I'm sorry, Raphael. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. That was great insight. So I definitely appreciate you cutting me off. So no, but I guess what I want to say is that, we probably have time for one more question. If anyone has any questions, if not, we'll try to see if we can, we'll wrap this up. Anyone have any more questions? Okay.
I'm around. I don't know. Like, I don't have a time crunch. I know other people to go. I'm around. Just so you know.
Oh, sure.
I've got something this just something on my head. With the state of the world right now that we're in, one thing I've been thinking about is how much reserves do I need to have at all the time? And I ask people this all the time. So, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. How much reserves do you think that you need, like, in an account for, a rainy day?
Hang on one second. My audio cut out. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Test. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yep.
Shoot.
You there?
This is my bad. I tried to go to the.
Sounds like we could.
Reserves. I'm so sorry. Reserves.
Reserves. Yeah.
right now on 8 properties, right? So a lot of it depends on how much you have CapEx.
Right.
A lot of it depends on how old are the roofs and how old are the HVACs. So when I do my rehabs, I basically do roofs and HVACs on most of them. So I'm not too worried about that. On 8 properties that average, I own them for $65,000, $70,000. I have about 25 grand.
Okay.
That's no math. That's no math. I've never had more than a $5,000 a month ever. Right. So
Right.
25 grand, my guess is probably more than I need.
Yeah.
And in the big picture, like, if I brought it down to 15, I'd probably be fine. But leaving $10,000 over there for like perfect peace of mind makes me pretty happy. I don't know what the right answer is. A lot of people ask that question. I also think it depends. Like, are you like super cash tight? If it's really hard for you to accumulate cash, then light on reserves seems appealing, so you can buy more stuff. But that's also tough because if you have, it also depends on how much debt you have. If you have access to HELOCs and low interest debt, then maybe you need less reserves because you in a pinch you can borrow cheaply. If you're like maxed out on debt and you have no cash, bro, time to save.
Right. Well, I'm always, you said you bought in cash and then you're all about not using loans. And so that's why I thought maybe, you might be on the higher spectrum of how much reserves you might want to have and that sort of thing. Cause I'm definitely on I think I always am way higher than what people tell me that they have. So I'm always like, I need more than that. So
I buy in cash, but then I refinance.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. 25 grand for all 5. Yeah. 25 per property. Girl, I ain't that rich.
That would be a lot.
I do not have it like that. So yeah, it's a balance, right? Because if you have too much sitting there, if you have, $25,000 per property on a $60,000 property,
that would be way too much.
Yeah. How much money do you have? That's dead equity, right? That's dead money. So you got to be careful.
Yeah. You
got to be a little careful not to have money just sitting there dead.
Exactly. That's the struggle is you want to have some, but you don't have too much. You want to make sure you can grow all the rest of it. But, anyways, I think your answer is perfectly reasonable. And it's probably a little bit more than what most people even say. So.
Yeah. And again, it depends. Like, you probably should have more up front when you start. And then as the years go by, you can probably have less, right? Because, set aside $5,000 per property. Which is, depending on the property, it might be right? If you have $300,000 properties, it might not be enough because the roof on each property is going to be 15 grand. A roof on my property is 5,500. So if I have 3 roofs go out all at once, I'm okay. That is it's not going to happen. Now, if you have a roof, HVAC go out at once, 10 grand. Like, again, it's one of those things where I've now had my first rental I bought, my first house, my property that I bought was in 2010. And so every couple of years, the upstairs house, it's a HOA. Don't buy a freaking condo. That's the stupidest thing I ever did. Don't buy a condo. And so the upstairs unit floods. And so every couple of years I got to go in there like I'm out 3 or 4 grand, which is painful. Don't buy a condo. Oh my God. But the rest of my property is like nothing. Nothing ever goes wrong. Every once in a while, I think last year I had probably $5,000 on one property for the whole year. I don't know what my maintenance is. Maybe less than 10 grand. So what do you need 25 for? That's 2.5 years of repairs on average. Now, again, you're going to have fluctuations. So when you get longer in time, you'll have a better understanding of what your maintenance cost is. So 2.5x your yearly expense in maintenance is probably plenty.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know why, but that question I've been asking everybody lately, just because when March hit and everyone's like everything's shut down forever, I was like, oh God.
In March, it was good to be scared.
Yeah.
It was good to be cautious. I wrote a whole thing like, don't spend $1. I don't know what's gonna happen. Don't spend any money. Because you might need all the cash you could accumulate. I had no idea. And it's better to be, I don't want to say it's better to be cautious than not because caution costs money, but I was in a kind of similar boat. It was like, okay, hold on tight. I don't know what this,
Yeah.
I didn't know, the world could have ended. How do I find my properties now? I've never been good at deal flow. I think now, if you can get into marketing yourself and wholesaling, you have a super advantage, and I don't want to do it. So I don't, and it's a disadvantage. It's a disadvantage, and that's kind of the reason why I like moving to multifamily, because the multifamily properties you find through networks, and single family homes you find through marketing. And I'm bad at marketing and good at networking. So for me, it's like lean on your strength, outsource your weakness. For the wholesale deals that I buy now, the flips, my strategy is, again, reach out to every wholesaler that I know, and I email them, call them, or text them every single day. And I am obnoxious to them. And I'm like, I'm going to piss you off every day until I get a deal. Then I'll go away. The only way for you to get me to go away is to help me make money. And so that process, now I'm very obnoxious when I want to be. That process usually takes me about a week before somebody's like, here's something, just stop. So you have to find your little way, but Facebook groups, Craigslist, wholesalers, real estate agents, like, again, it's the same thing. Go on the internet and tell everybody what you're looking for. Be specific about your criteria, but it's tricky. Like, I want to see every deal they come across, because the wholesalers don't know. They don't know what they don't know. They're guessing. I'm not trying to offend any. I don't care. The wholesaler will send you a deal that's not a deal, and they'll send you something that's junk that is a deal. So I want everything. Everything you get, send it to me, and I'll spend every day. I'll go through my email list, and then when I find a deal, I turn them all off again, and then I go and do my little deal, because I only generally do one single family at home. But for me, again, everything I do starts with networking, because that's what I'm good at. So I burn the phone down, I burn emails down, and I'll just pester people. Like, I think one guy named Bob Sleeves. I love him to death, as much as you can love a wholesaler. I text him 5 times a day. You got a deal for me? Oh, I saw you sold a deal to somebody else. How come I didn't see that first? Right? Oh, well, it wouldn't have been a good deal for you. It's like, that's not up for you to decide. I want to know. I want to see every deal first. And so I'm just invasive to people. And they're like, generally people they respond to that, in my experience. And so, like, here's everything. And then I'll find one and I'll go away. I don't think that's good advice, but that is what I do. What is a reasonable fee to pay a wholesaler? The only thing I hate more than real estate brokers are wholesalers. Nothing. There's no reasonable fee to pay a wholesaler. Look, we live in a market capitalist system. It doesn't matter what the wholesaler makes. It matters what you're willing to pay. If the house is worth 55 and you buy it for 45, do you care that he got it for $1? So I used to sell cars, right? Anybody ever go to trade a car in, and the dealership's like, we're going to give you less than it's worth, or less than you owe on it, rather. We're going to give you less than you owe on it. And you're like, I owe 10 and you're only going to give me 8. I owe 15 and you're only going to give me 10. Like, you're not giving me what it's worth. Well, the question is, inevitably the question is, well, if you owed 0, would you want 0? Right? What the property is worth and what somebody's going to make on it are irrelevant. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. I bought a house for $65,000. I should close on it Monday. I don't know what the wholesaler made. Probably made 10 grand. Right? And let's see, that's 16%, right? Probably too much. I mean, if you know anything about business, right? Like, that's probably too much. And whatever, I don't know. What's the reasonable fee to pay somebody? It doesn't matter. And thinking about it only makes you mad. Well, it makes me mad. So I pay for the house what it's worth. Move on.
All right. So yeah, I think Jessica had one more question, which was, can you share on how you analyze your deals? And I think that was kind of similar to what you mentioned earlier, but if you could just elaborate a little bit on that.
Deal analysis becomes really easy when you know the market very well. So what I tell people is, like, pay attention to what people go and they look at it. Here's how I think it happens, at least, or what it used to happen to me. So I'll send you a deal, and then you're gonna look at the deal, and then you're focused on you're focused on, is this a deal or not? And if it takes you more than 5 minutes to know, then then instead you should be focusing on understanding the market and knowing what a deal looks like, so that when one comes across, you already know. And what I mean by that is, let's do something like this. Let's go to your network and talk to every flipper. Say you want to flip houses. Go talk to every flipper you know, and like ask them to send you a Zillow for all the deals that they've done, as many as they'll let you tell you. And then you look at the Zillow, you see what it sold for. How long did it take to sell? Right? What did they pay for it before? Now you can start to see spreads. You can estimate rehab costs. Maybe you have before pictures. A lot of, like, if you look at me, my deals, I'll tell you what I paid for all my deals, and I'll tell you what they were worth afterwards, and I'll tell you what the rent for, and I'll show you before and after pictures, and I'll tell you what the rehab cost was. You start putting all that information. It's like, I know what a deal looks like in Fayetteville. So when the deal shows up, and when this deal showed up and it was $65,000 and it's going to cost me 40 to rehab, that's 105. And I knew I could sell it for 145. That's a deal. Why? I looked at the neighborhood. It's in a good neighborhood. It's in a cul-de-sac. I know that the last 2 houses that I sold for 145 sold in 1 day because interest rates are so low and the market's hot. So it was more about the neighborhood, the market conditions, and me understanding that, that I knew instantly that with $45,000 of equity that it would make money. Now, I don't care if it makes $45,000 or $25,000, to be honest. If I'm $20,000 wrong, I'm a happy camper. So I think that's another part of deal analysis. It's like, know what a deal looks like before it comes across your desk. And that means studying the market, studying other people's deals, tracking deals on Zillow so you can see like what's average, talk to realtors, what's average days on market, what's the average house price sold. Understanding rehab costs is difficult. Jay Scott wrote a good book, estimating rehab costs. The other thing I'll tell people to do is go volunteer for Habitat for Humanity. They will teach you how to build houses. They will introduce you to contractors. They won't let you mess anything up. You can charitably give back to your community. It's like a triple win. And then you can get a lot more confident about like, hey, what's behind that drywall? Freaking nothing. And then outside before you know it. I had a buddy call me up and freak out one day. He's like, my whole house is flipped. I need all new baseboard. What is baseboard? It sounds expensive. And I'm like, you're in a tough spot, bro. It's $1,200. So I know that's probably not a good answer you're asking for. How do you analyze deals? For me, I don't really do deal analysis anymore. By the time I see one, I know within 30 seconds if it's a deal, and that's just experience. And so my recommendation is really immerse yourself in the market. Spend time looking at Zillow every day. If you have MLS access, like look at those deals, track them on a spreadsheet, find out what they were on the market for, then find out what they sold for, calculate the delta. So you know what the average delta between asking and selling price is in the market at any time. All these things, immersion really matters more than the deal itself. If it's a BRRRR deal, it should be gross rents minus vacancy, capex, maintenance, management, taxes, insurance. That's it, right? And then that's NOI, and then after NOI is principal and interest, mortgage, and then you have cash flow. Look at a Schedule E. If you don't know what a Schedule E looks like on taxes, this is something I forget about because I've looked at taxes for banking for so many years. Go look up what a Schedule E is on the internet. They're obviously public record. You have them on your taxes too, and you can understand how the government looks at your rental income, which matters for lending. So it's not perfect, but it's similar, right? Because you're going to write all your expenses. So same thing you're going to underwrite. Like if it doesn't make money on your underwriting, it's not going to make money on taxes. I'm kind of rambling. There's a bunch of different little things there. I hope some of that's helpful.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's
No,
great.
I'm sure it was. Oh yeah, no, for sure. All right.
NOI for multifamily.
So, well,
Bro. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead. No, we'll have one more question just because I want to make sure that we have enough time for everyone. So, but yeah, I guess how do you evaluate NOIs for multifamilies?
That's actually quite a bit more complicated because you run into, in the 52 unit, which how good are the accounting? How good is the accounting of the seller? Sometimes they give you just a mess, and it's like you're guessing. So it's much more difficult. It's much more difficult on multifamily, and you're going to need to partner up. In my opinion, I know one guy that does 40 units a freaking month by himself, multifamily properties, but most people I know, I could not have done this 52 without, and I've done underwriting and I still had somebody else do it because you want to have multiple people checking behind you. It's also difficult in that you can't be super conservative. If you can be super conservative on your own deals and you don't make money, or you undersell yourself, it doesn't matter because you're the one that takes a loss. But when you do a multifamily deal, it's like, I'm going to pay you 8%. So now if I'm too conservative, I miss the deal. And if I'm too liberal, I'm lying. And now I can't give you the returns you want. So I don't have any great advice for you, Jeff, but it's much more thorough. So you need a much more robust spreadsheet, something I can probably give you if you need it. You need a much more robust spreadsheet. You need multiple people looking at it because the tendency for you to lie, if you fudge the numbers on a single family on maintenance, it should be 10%, but it's 5%. It's like, okay, 5%. If you do that on a multifamily where there's, instead of 5 expense accounts, there's 25 and you're 2% off on each, you done messed up. And then you get into other weird things like what's CapEx and what's maintenance. And not just that, but what did the previous owner count as CapEx? And what did the previous owner count as maintenance? Because now it's going to look different based on whether you get their, about how they do the reporting. So they might be reporting things that are maintenance as CapEx. So they don't show up on NOI, even though they should have. So it can get complicated. You need to really know your stuff a little better on the multifamily. Don't go fast. Take your time.
Probably a good reason why it's a good idea to start with single family, right? Start with single family and slowly grow into it. And that way you get a little bit of experience. And at least that's kind of the way I understand it.
Yeah. So. And look, I was an underwriter for SBA lending in Las Vegas for a big underwriting company, for a big bank, reasonably good, big regional bank. And it's still tough for me. Right. So it's a complicated process. I'm a numbers guy. I'm an analytical guy, but I actually like big picture ideas, high concept ideas way better than I like grinding a spreadsheet. If you don't like grinding a spreadsheet, you need that partner because somebody's gonna have to sit there and look at it and enjoy it. And if you don't like it, you're gonna go fast and you're gonna lie to yourself to make it sound good. Find somebody who likes the spreadsheets and is kind of neurotic. That's what you want.
All right. So I guess what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go ahead and wrap it up now. I know that everyone it's had a ton of great value to add, but Alex, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to come share information with us. I will be posting this on YouTube as well, and I'll include Alex's contact information, his social media platforms as well. If you guys do want to follow him, I'd encourage you to do so. He really does create some really cool content. And again, he's just super helpful. And if you're ever in Louisville, feel free to touch base. I mean, we hope to get back to in person soon. So if you're ever around town, just let us know. We'll be happy to host you at one of the events. So
thank you. Yeah, I plan on hitting everywhere over the next few years. So thank you, everybody. Hope I was useful. Hopefully.
Definitely, man. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it coming on. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Bye.
See you guys. Bye.